My name's Luke Davidson. I'm the campus pastor here at the North Richland Hills campus, and I'm excited. We're kicking off a new series today called Dark Horses. And I told my community group this past week the name, and they said, what's a dark horse? Did you say dark forces, they said? I said, no, dark horses. Do you know what a dark horse is? It's an underdog. And so we've got a little definition. What is a dark horse? A little-known person, unlikely to succeed, who ultimately accomplishes great things. We all love a dark horse story. We love the underdog story. Some of our favorite movies are underdog stories, aren't they? Movies like Rocky. Any fans of Rocky? Or Hidden Figures was one of my favorites the past few years. Lord of the Rings, if you're a nerd like me. Cool Runnings, I love that. It was a classic. And then Braveheart. Any Braveheart fans? And then, of course, the seminal favorite, Dodgeball. Right? We love a dark horse story. And the storyline is always the same, isn't it? Somebody you don't expect to do anything ends up doing something that leaves everybody saying, that was amazing. That was incredible. And for a fleeting moment, a glimmer, you yourself wonder, I wonder if God could do something great through me. But then you wake up and you have to take the garbage out and you think, did Braveheart have to take the garbage out? I don't think so. And you start to feel feelings of inadequacy. You ever feel inadequate? And I don't know what it is that maybe you feel inadequate about. I know I feel inadequate about a lot of things. It's just part of being human in our relationship. In our culture today, I think that we have a lot of things that tell us we don't measure up. Maybe you don't feel like you measure up financially, like you feel inadequate. Because it's hard, it's impossible to keep up with the Joneses. It's just always trying to strive and how much is going to be enough money to make me feel rich and all these things. And you'll never feel adequate. And so maybe you feel like you don't measure up financially. Maybe relationally. Now you feel like you don't measure up, whether it's in your marriage, it's like, man, this isn't working out. Or just in general, you just like, I can't find that person. It's a big desire in my heart and you just feel inadequate. Maybe it's in your career. You say, I had hopes and dreams. Or it's in school, say, I wanted to go to this school, or I wanted to do better in this situation, or my teacher and I don't get along, or I don't know what it is. But you have these hopes and dreams with your life, or with your career, or with a sport, something you wanted to accomplish, and maybe it's not going the way that you wanted it to, and you feel feelings of inadequacy. I don't measure up. I'm not really that special. I don't think I'm going to do anything great. I don't think I'm going to do anything meaningful. And I just want to say to you, anybody who feels that way, this series is for you. It's for us. It's for me. For any of us who've ever felt inadequate. Because what we know and what you probably know, if you haven't heard this before, I hope you hear me say this, but others of you just need to rehear it. You need to hear it again. God uses ordinary, normal people like you and me to do really great, powerful, lasting things that matter. Maybe they don't get all the press clippings of some people, but it makes an impact that is really powerful and worthwhile. So today I want to kick it off by looking at one of the greatest dark horse stories in the whole Bible, the story of Nehemiah. If you have your Bible or your phone, find the book of Nehemiah. It's in the Old Testament. It will be a journey for you to find if you're not very familiar. Just good luck finding. I don't even know. I was trying to think, how do I help you find Nehemiah? You're going to have to use the table of contents and find it. But it is worth finding because I'm going to try to tell you the story of Nehemiah in a 30-minute session here. And it's worth your time to go read Nehemiah. It's not that long, but it would be worth your while this week even maybe to read through the story. You're going to pick up on a lot of details I just didn't have time to get into. Nehemiah was a normal person. He was not a president, not a king, not a priest, not a prophet, not a pastor, just an ordinary guy. He wasn't even verified on Instagram. He was an ordinary, normal guy, and he had a job as the cupbearer to the king of Persia. So he was serving a very powerful, very special, very important person. What does it mean to be a cupbearer? Well, in general, a lot of tasks involved, but in general, the cupbearer tastes and drinks the king's beverages before the king, eats the king's food before the king, not just for quality purposes, although I'm sure that was part of it, like, hey, this is not satisfactory, but maybe even more so to make sure the food wasn't poisoned, because people would try to poison the king sometimes to kill the king because back in a monarchy situation, you got a king for 40 years. If you get tired of that 30 years in, well, let's just poison him. We'll get somebody new. And so the cupbearer had the job of taste testing the food. And so if the king looked at Nehemiah when it was dinner time and Nehemiah had tried the food, and if Nehemiah's complexion looked healthy and he was breathing and everything, oh, okay, I guess we can eat. But if you looked over at Nehemiah or the cupbearer and Nehemiah's grabbing his throat, he's dying and choking, maybe the king says, I think I've lost my appetite. Just pass on dinner tonight. Seems like, well, just wait till breakfast tomorrow. Because I'm hoping Nehemiah had good life insurance. It was a risky job to be the cupbearer for the king. Our dark horse story begins on a day where one of Nehemiah's brothers came to visit him and shared with him some news that was like a body blow to Nehemiah. Just knocks the air out of him, so to speak. It's in chapter 1, verse 2. He says, Hanani, one of my brothers came to visit me with some other men who had just arrived from Judah. Judah is the area where the city of Jerusalem is. Many of us today still call it the Holy Land. It's where most of the Old Testament took place in that region. And it's actually where Jesus lived and grew up as well. At least he grew up in the northern area. Judah would have been in the southern area. But you get the idea. It's kind of the center of biblical activity, so to speak. So his family, some friends had just come from there. I asked them about the Jews who had returned there from captivity and how things were going in Jerusalem. Now, just to kind of give you some context here, Nehemiah and his people were not from Persia. They were not from the land where King Artaxerxes was king. They were from Judah. And some of their brothers and friends and family had gone back. And maybe what you don't see in the context here is many years previously, their entire people had been militarily conquered by the Babylonians, and the Babylonians marched them off into slavery and exile. And then the Babylonians were conquered by the Persians, and when the Persians came around, they started to let them return back home. How are things going, brother? You guys are back home, back in the place where our people are from, back at the place where the ancient temple was, the center of our life and everything, man. Are you guys returning things to glory? It's kind of cool. You guys are going back. How are things? He says things are not going well for those who have returned to the province of Judah. Really, really bad. They are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down. The gates have been destroyed by fire. This is not obviously what Nehemiah expected him to say. But Hanani is like, listen, you ever ask somebody how you feel? How you doing? Oh, do you really want to know how I'm doing? Not doing well. And Hanani is honest with him. And when Nehemiah hears this, it breaks him. What do you do when you hear something that you know matters and that you know God wants you to be a part of, but you don't know what to do? You have no idea. An important question for you is what breaks your heart? And what do you do when something that's really powerful and moving, when it breaks your heart? I'm going to give you a model of what Nehemiah did, which I think is a healthy way to respond. 5 steps. Number 1, you sit down and cry. It's important. He says in verse 4, when I heard this, I sat down and I wept. It crushed my heart, crushed my spirit. Even though Jerusalem was 1,000 miles away from where he was, he said, I can't just go on and pretend this isn't a big deal. This is a big deal. I can't just go home and watch ESPN. I can't just go home and watch Netflix. I can't just take selfies of me working here in the presence of the king. Hashtag blessed to serve. Hey, it's great. No, he says, I have to do something. I can't just go on with life as normal, because it broke his heart. And I'm going to talk a little bit later, a little bit more to help us appreciate why this broke his heart so much, because maybe some of you are like, people, there's a bunch of cities that need help. But I first just want to ask you, what breaks your heart? And sometimes we get so distracted, or we escape into entertainment, into our phones, into TV, movies, or something, and we just avoid the very real suffering that is in this world and in our neighborhoods and on your street and maybe in your home or in your own personal life, and you say, I have to escape. And I get that, but there comes a time where you need to open your eyes and see, and you need to listen and hear the pain and the suffering of the world around you. And that should break your heart. I wonder if you have a burden for people who are illiterate and don't know how to read, and that's really stunting what they can do professionally and the generation coming underneath of them and how they're going to raise up their kids. Do you have a burden? Does it break your heart? The global poverty, that there are kids dying from a lack of basic nutrition and clean water. Does it break your heart? For people that are under control of substances and alcohol, and you say, man, I would love to help set them free. Does it break your heart? Do you have a burden for those who are trafficked and abused? Do you have a burden? Does it break your heart that there are foster kids? And maybe you have a burden to say, I would love to show them that there's a family that can care for them or help them and give them a home. Do you have a heart, a broken heart, a burden for people who are far from God, who don't know that there's a God? They think God hates them. They think God is mean, or they don't even know if he exists. And you say, man, I just wish they knew there's a God who loves them and cares about them. I would love to be a part of introducing them to God. What breaks your heart? Let it knock the air out of you. Don't just escape those feelings, because they're important. Because whenever you are broken, you'll realize, I need something that's bigger to solve this than just me. I can't do it on my own strength. And that leads you to number 2. You kneel down and you pray. You kneel down and you pray. Verses 4 and 5, Nehemiah says, for days, in fact, I mourned, fasted, and I prayed to the God of heaven. And then I said, O Lord God of heaven. And then he goes on and says, listen to my prayer. Look down and see me praying night and day for your people, Israel. If you read on in his prayer, he confesses his own sin, confesses the sin of the people. He's basically just calling out to God, saying, God, I know we've messed this up. I know that we are guilty. In fact, the reason why their city was initially conquered was in large part due to the actions of their own people. And so there's a lot of self-reflection that Nehemiah is just going through in this moment, and just saying, God, I'm sorry, we're sorry, but unless you change something, we can't fix this problem. I need your help. And so he doesn't just pray once. He doesn't just pray for a day or 1 week or 1 month. He prays for 4 months. He just continually prays, as if he's calling out to this God who specializes in accomplishing the impossible. Like, God, only you can do this. And if you just leave me here, I'm just going to keep praying, because I don't know what to do. I can't solve this. This is way too big for me to solve. You want me to rebuild an entire city and all their walls and everything? But we got to do something, God. What are we going to do? Sometimes I wonder if we get overwhelmed by situations in life because we don't really take it to God. Like, we pray once, we say, God, do this. Amen. All right, what are we going to do? And then we just move on as if it's solved and we've got a plan. And you don't. And notice Nehemiah just keeps going back. Says, God, you haven't made a way yet, so I'm just going to keep praying and reminding you. I know you know this, but let me, just make you aware. There's people suffering along in our homeland, like where we're from. This isn't okay. Like you said, you set a covenant with us and a promise that you would never leave us or forsake us. And we're feeling pretty forsaken right now and isolated. And we need you to come through. And he just keeps praying and praying and praying and calling out to God. Tomorrow, on Monday, we as a church, not just this campus, but all of our campuses, I think it's so cool, the unity of this. We are going to launch into an adventure of prayer. Not for 4 months, but for 21 days. We're going to pray together for 21 days. And I want to ask you, will you engage and be a part of this 21 days of prayer? You say, well, what do you want me to do? I just want you to say, I'm going to pray daily with the church. There's a lot of different facets, and you can decide how involved you want to be. But if you go to the website, mycompass.church.com/21 prayer, 21 days of prayer, 21 prayer right there, you'll learn all the events and things that are going on. But maybe I could direct you to this. There's a church app. It's called Compass app. If you will download that app, you can find it on the website. There are daily devotionals. They're not that long, just nice little thoughts that you could read daily for the next 21 days. And if you enable notifications on that app, it should remind you, and you'll say, oh yeah, there it is. You just click on it, read it. And I think that would unify us and we would be praying about similar things in a like-minded way. I think that could be really powerful, don't you? I really think it could. So I love what Andy Stanley says about prayer. And I just kind of want you to think about this as we launch into this 21 days of prayer. Look what Andy Stanley says. We see what we're looking for. We often miss what we don't expect to see. We're not looking for. Prayer keeps us looking, keeps our eyes open. Prayer keeps the burden fresh. It keeps our eyes and hearts in expectant mode, expecting God to show us something. Prayer doesn't force God's hand, but it keeps us on the lookout for his intervention. And then he goes on. He says, prayer sensitizes us. We're so desensitized. There's so many things fighting for our attention, right? So many things distracting us. But prayer sensitizes us to the subtle changes in the landscape of our circumstances. Praying almost ensures that we won't miss the opportunities that God brings our way because we're paying attention and listening. Looking for something doesn't necessarily mean you will find it, but it sure increases the odds of seeing it if it is there to be seen in the first place. So, I think that if you will engage in prayer with us daily, unified, in a like-minded way, that God will open our eyes to something that needs to be a burden in our heart. Many times I wonder, why hasn't someone dealt with some issue in the world? And I wonder if God's saying, because you're not paying attention, you're not feeling it, you're not understanding the brokenness. God is not set apart from people's suffering. He has entered into our suffering. Let us not separate ourselves, but let us enter in to the brokenness and the suffering of this world. And it's hard, and it's something that you cannot do on your own, and I cannot do. But with God's help, I think God could open us up to the possibility that there are people who need help. And I believe that if you will engage with us for 21 days of prayer, some incredible things could happen. I think God might make you aware of a passion and burden on your heart that you had not seen before. He might lead some of you who are so shrouded in darkness and you're so confused, your life is so falling apart right now, you don't know what to do. He might lead you to the next step. I think he could do that in the next 21 days. I think he will heal. I expect, not just mental or spiritual, but physical, that God will heal and do some powerful things. But maybe I could really emphasize, I think that if you'll engage with us for 21 days in prayer, I think God will plant some dreams and visions in your mind of some incredible things that he has called you to do. That if you engaged with, would lead you on an adventure that would never again make your life feel boring, but very purposeful, like an adventure. Something great, something that could really make a difference. That's what Nehemiah experienced. He cried, he prayed. This is just one of 17 prayers that's recorded in Nehemiah, by the way, and there's many more that I'm sure that were not recorded. And then there came a point, and there comes a point in any of our journey, where you don't just cry, you don't just pray. Now it's time to stand up and act. You have to do something. This is pivotal, a pivotal moment whenever you take the burden and the prayer, and God presents a way, and you say, now I've got the courage to step into this moment. Nehemiah builds up the courage, goes into the king, which is his normal job. I don't know if he's carrying in the king's cup or what, but the king looks at him and notices, this is how perceptive this king is. He's aware of his environment. He notices that Nehemiah, something is wrong. He says, man, the look on your face, what's wrong? What's going on? Nehemiah says, I was terrified. And then he replies, long live the king. He's like, listen, I don't have a problem with you. We're good. Please don't execute me, all-powerful one. But how can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. How can I not be sad, he says. And I don't know what Nehemiah was expecting the king's response to be. I can't imagine that it was this. The king asked, how can I help you? Just like that. The most powerful person in the world says, what can I do to help? Wow. And I want you to see how easy this moment is and realize this didn't just happen. 4 months of prayer led up to this incredible response from the most powerful person in the world. And now Nehemiah has an opportunity, an answer to prayer that I'm not sure he ever could have imagined how good this is. So he goes on. He says, with a prayer to the God of heaven, he throws up a Hail Mary prayer right there. God, here we go. I'm talking to the king. Like, if you could help me out now, this would be great. I replied, if it pleases the king, and if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. Send me there, if it pleases you. I love this next detail. It says, with the king with the queen sitting beside him. Love that detail. Didn't have to include that. So the reason why I think it's in there is because the queen, we know who was really running things. And I don't know if he looked over. I'm just imagining, did he look over at her and she gives the look like, you had better help him. And so immediately he asks her, how long will you be gone? He says, and when will you return? Just like that. I mean, do you understand the power and just how huge the kingdom of Persia was? And for somebody to have this sort of relationship and the king just trusts and says, man, I know you. I know your heart. I know who you are. I see your life. You're here all the time. If there's anything that's on your heart that needs to be done, what do you need? I'll help you do it because I know that it's good. And notice Nehemiah doesn't hesitate. He doesn't just fumble around. Oh gosh, I don't have a plan. I wasn't ready for this moment. No, he says, I've planned for 4 months. I've been praying and thinking about this. I am not throwing away my shot. One of you has seen Hamilton, only one. It's a great underdog, dark horse story, by the way. But he says, I'm not throwing away my shot. And after I told him how long I would be gone, the king agreed to my request. Let me just emphasize how amazing it is that King Artaxerxes agreed to this. Not Jewish. What does he care about this city far away? He doesn't. But let me also emphasize, we know that this very king had previously canceled and stopped the work and the progress on the city of Jerusalem. We know this. It's in Ezra chapter 4. You can go check it, reference it. I don't have a ton of time to get into this, but I just want you to see these are his words. He wrote a big, important document to the people and the governors of the area and said, Jerusalem has been a hotbed of insurrection. A rebellion and revolt are normal there. That city must not be rebuilt except at my express command. What changed? A normal person with a connection on the inside. Plan from God, and now he has the favor of the king with the courage to take advantage of this opportunity, the access that he has to the king to make a big ask and to stand up and to act. And then God answered his prayer in the most incredible way. Are you ever shocked by the way that God answers a prayer in just a powerful new way? It's really cool. 4 years ago, I was praying about what are we going to be doing professionally in my career as a pastor and stuff like that. It's weird to kind of think that way, but you're like, are we going to stay with Compass? We're going somewhere else? I don't know. Pastor Drew, our lead pastor, our executive pastor, Dave Toney, called me in and said, hey, we want you to launch the next campus of our church. I was like, man, that would be fantastic. I love Compass. I get to preach and lead. And so I started to dream and study, like, where are we going to do this campus? The fastest growing area in our region is North Fort Worth. I was like, they need churches. But I also found through studying that the largest number of attendees and members of our church outside of the immediate campus areas was right here in North Richland Hills. So I was really torn. It's like, man, I live in North Richland Hills. I already feel so kindred with the community, and I already feel like a pastor to a lot of the neighbors and the families that live in North Richland Hills. But North Fort Worth is growing fast, and I was just so distraught. I was really torn about it. And so, I mean, you could ask my wife. I had sleepless nights. I was worried. I was praying, having all sorts of conversations. What are we going to do? And then the elders and Drew came back and said, let's do both. Both? Both. Let's do both. I hadn't thought of that. That was a cool idea. And so we launched both campuses that year, and I helped lead the launch of the North Richland Hills campus. And here we are. Last week, we celebrated 2 years since the launch of our campus. I think that's worth celebrating. I think we can clap for that. Yeah. And we've only begun this journey. And then I had the next big decision, which didn't start at the launch. I'd actually been, for about 6 months to a year, trying to figure this out previous to that. Where's our first permanent location going to be? Like a first home of this church campus. And so I started looking at buildings and land here, there, and everywhere. And I can't tell you how many, there had to be over 100 places that came across on our charts and everything. And I would try to convince myself that something was right, but we had wise people on our team that was like, Luke, it's not right. Or some of us would like it and others wouldn't. And then we'd find something that was like, well, let's try this. And we'd move forward with it. And then we'd get with like the seller and things were a little shady and weird. And we're like, no, that's not it. And I was getting really frustrated, like a year and a half of just praying and God, come on, this is really frustrating. There's got to be something. And then I got a call from our realtor and he said, hey, this piece of property, you know about it? I was like, do I know about it? I drive past it like every single day. That's available? Yeah. Let's meet with the seller. Okay, let's meet. We went, had lunch. That day, the seller came in with a crystal clear contract, which I can't tell you how that was so much different than every other thing we had looked at. And he was just, he was really aware of the situation. So we took that back a few days later, shared it with the leadership. Unanimous support of our future first home. And now you're looking at, if you haven't seen it before, the future first home of the North Richland Hills campus. Bercy and Davis. Something to pray about, yeah. And I think in a similar way, we have an awesome opportunity to build something like Nehemiah went and rebuilt that will make a huge impact on the surrounding community. Something to pray about, something to trust that God can and will do something that's more complete and perfect and unified than anything we could ask, think, or imagine. Here's what we know. And you've heard me say this number before if you're around here for a while, but if you're new, maybe this will kind of be eye-opening for you. Say, God, you've opened my eyes a little bit. Within a 5-mile radius of this area, 250,000 people live. Within 5-mile radius. Wow, it's like a quarter of the size of the entire city that I grew up in. That's because the Metroplex is just that big. So you start to think about that number of people. There's not enough churches to reach 250,000 people, or to at least to minister well to 250,000 people. Let's say there were 20 churches in this area that were running over 1,000 people and were actively connecting people. That's 20,000. Let's double it. Let's say there were 20 churches running over 2,000. That's 40,000 people. Fantastic, right? That means there's still over 200,000 people that aren't actively being ministered to in a church community. They don't have people that they can be honest and real with, and maybe they don't know that there's a God who died for them and paid their sin to give them new life and wants to have a relationship to invite them into the family. They don't know that Jesus was completely innocent, didn't do anything wrong, and yet he took our guilt and condemnation, exchanged himself in our place so that we could be made holy and righteous instead of being condemned for our sin. They don't know that. And so the potential is really staggering to think about what we could do and the impact that we could make in this area. And we could be comfortable, we could enjoy, and maybe there will come a day when we think back about the days here in NRH Center, and I love this place. They've been so good to us, and we've been putting out chairs and all those things, and we kind of get nostalgic. Absolutely, we will. But we're not here for ourselves. We're here for our community to grow and to give. And we know that buildings don't just build themselves. We want to pay off the land, and we want to build a building that we think could really reach this community in a massive way. And that's just one dream of many in the kingdom of God. And I hope that over the next 21 days, not only do you engage with that, but you only begin to personally as well dream about, God, what do you have for me? What am I supposed to do? We have a Night to Shine coming up in just a week or two. And guess what? We have way more guests at Night to Shine than we did last year, which is awesome. These are individuals, boys, girls, men and women with special needs. And for a night, we get to throw a huge party for them and say, you are loved, you are awesome, we care about you. But because we have so many more guests, that means we need many more buddies to pair up so that you can help these guests have an awesome night. Our kings and queens, we call them, of this event. And we want buddies to come and be a part of this. We still need 36 buddies. So I need you to step up and act. I need you to see a need and to put your actions where your words are, to say, man, I care about our community. This would be a great way. One night, just take one night. You will not believe, if you've never done it, the impact that it'll have on these individuals and on their families. Their families will be so grateful for you. I'm not kidding. You will make a huge impact just for one night. So consider a way. But whatever it is, whatever you open your eyes to, whatever breaks your heart and you pray about, when the moment comes, you stand up and act. But I'll tell you this, you can expect opposition. It's not going to be smooth sailing. There was massive, severe opposition before Nehemiah showed up. That didn't just magically disappear. You think no one has ever seen your problem and tried to solve it before? You're not that clever. People have tried to make clean water. People have tried to deal with global poverty. They've tried and they've failed. So if you are going to make a difference with this thing that has broken your heart and that you've prayed about and you've stood up and acted, you're not only going to need a plan from God and favor with a king or somebody that can give you access, but you're going to need persistence. You're going to have to persevere through opposition. One of the opponents that came against Nehemiah was Sanballat, which is one of my favorite names in the whole Bible. What a sweet name, Sanballat. I think that would be a good name for a bounty hunter in Mandalorian, don't you? So if you're a writer and you're watching online, season 2, I think there should be a bounty hunter named Sanballat. So Sanballat was very angry when he learned that we were rebuilding the wall. He didn't want this to happen because that meant he wouldn't be able to just control and do whatever he wanted. I mean, the walls are down. The city is vulnerable. The people are vulnerable. They're not safe. And he says, I can just come in here and bully them anytime I want. I don't want them to rebuild the wall. So he flew into a rage as they were building it, mocked the Jews, saying in front of his friends and the Samaritan army officers, what does this bunch of poor, feeble Jews think they're doing? He's just mocking them to their face. You're never going to do this. What a joke. Stop it. Tobiah the Ammonite also was standing beside him, remarked, the stone wall, it would collapse even if a fox walked across the top of it. Psst, you guys are horrible. This thing looks weak, pathetic. When you step in to act on something that God has called you to, opposition is going to step in as well. Be ready for it, expect it, persevere through it. Don't let it distract you. Maybe over the last few weeks, we were talking about habits and things we want to institute in our lives. And maybe you said, you know what? I'm going to get control of financial habits. And we're going to dig ourselves out of this debt or whatever it is. And then your car breaks down. You got a $1,500 repair. Like, what? You could expect opposition. Maybe you say, you know what? I care about the next generation. I want to start serving the families of our church. I want to watch the 2-year-olds in the children's programming on Sunday mornings. It'd be so fun. And you get 15 minutes in and a kid pukes Fruit Loops all down the front of your shirt. You can expect opposition. And then sometimes the opposition is vocal, like they just mock you, they make fun of you. You gonna engage with 21 days of prayer, the person who hits the snooze button 20 times every single morning? You'll never make it. And they just mock you. Or it's some area of your life and they say, you're too young. You're too old. You're too uneducated. You're too whatever. And don't you just want to say to them, you're too negative. And you don't know the power of my God. His power and his spirit is within me, and I will not be moved by your criticism. I have been moved by the power and the presence of God. I think what makes a dark horse story really great is because you see in those stories, you see in your life, you will become a dark horse when your God-ordained grit is greater than that of the opposition. And you start to believe, you know what? Strongholds can be broken. My sin is lying to me, saying that I'm a prisoner. I don't have to be a prisoner anymore. They don't have to be a prisoner anymore. I believe that those who are forgotten and overlooked and living in horrible conditions can be saved and helped and rescued. And I believe that relationships can be rebuilt. Nehemiah persevered through some really tough opposition. And then look what happened. On October 2nd, the wall was finished, just 52 days after we had begun. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated, and they realized this work had been done with the help of our God. When the enemies and the opponents saw this, their jaws dropped. What? You say, well, why? Why were they so impressed? Let me share with you the scoreboard of what things were like when Nehemiah showed up. How many years had it been since the city wall of Jerusalem was initially destroyed? 140 years. How many years since the first remnants of people began to return and try to start rebuilding? How many years had it been? They came back, they started to rebuild, things got stopped. How many years? 92 years. They had come back, tried to rebuild. They'd get a little headway, and then a king would stop some things, or somebody come in and topple more. They'd try to start rebuilding things or knock down things or set on fire. It's again and again and again for 92 years. That means 92 years of failure and 92 years of broken dreams. Now let this set in. How many days did it take Nehemiah and the people under his leadership to rebuild the wall? 52 days. Not 52 years, not 52 months or weeks, 52 days. No wonder people could not believe that he in 52 days undid or rebuilt what had been undone for 140 years. It was incredible, and it left people looking and saying, there's no way they did this without the hand of God. There's just no way. It's not possible. And they were like, man, whoever they're worshiping, whoever this God is, that's pretty impressive. And I long for people to look at our church and for people to say, man, there is no way they accomplished that. I'm talking about on a level that our church has never been looked at before. There should be something in our future where people look and say, man, how did they reverse poverty that way? How did they help those who are living in horrible conditions? How did they bring hope? How did they fix and repair that many marriages? And we'll just have to say, we can't take credit. God did something great. And they say, wow. And I long for people to look at our lives, your life and my life, and for them to say, there is no way you did that without the hand of God in your life. I mean, I knew them. I knew that person. They were crazy. They couldn't control anything. And you see them now. They're content and they have peace and they're mature and they're serving other people instead of just their own interests. Like that's the hand of God. And you've sat and you've cried and you've prayed and you've stood up to act and you persevered. And when people look at your life because of it, you give God the glory. That's what Nehemiah did. Give God the glory. And I long for people to look at our lives like that. For us to do something that really matters, as ordinary and normal and inadequate as we feel, that we would use the opportunity that God has given us, not to just pity ourselves and to feel inadequate and insecure, but to use the opportunities that we have, to leverage our opportunity and power to help others who feel inadequate and don't have power and don't have opportunity and don't have peace in their life. I'll tell you this, you'll never finish what you don't start. So today, I hope this will kind of sit in your mind, and tomorrow as we launch on 21 days of prayer, I hope that you'll begin to open your eyes and that you will let things break your heart and you will pray. And then when the time comes, you'll be ready to stand up and act, persevere, and you'll do it all for the glory of God. Let's bow our heads and let's pray together. And I just want you to know that after the service, I'll be up here with some of our team members because I know what it feels like to say, I can't do this on my own. If you'd like us to pray for you, we would love to do that. But I'd like to just pray for you right now before we wrap up our service. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful that you're a God who has not abandoned us in our sin and our brokenness and the suffering of this world, but you have entered in. And in fact, I sometimes wonder if the suffering and the brokenness makes us aware of your love for us on a deeper level than we ever would have known otherwise, and prepares us and gives us compassion and empathy for others who are suffering. To say, I can't ignore that. I know that feeling. So I pray that over the next 21 days, you would open up our eyes as we engage in prayer in unity as a church. That you would help us to see what you see, and that it would matter to us what matters to you. Lord, I also want to pray for anybody in this room. It's not a project or something that they need to do that's falling apart. It's their own life, and they don't even know how to take the next step themselves. And I just want you to know, with every head bowed as we continue praying, if you feel that way today, I just want to lead you through a simple prayer. If you say, I don't know what to do next, let me just offer. Just repeat these words after me in your heart and your mind as a prayer to God. Here we go. God, my life is falling apart, and I don't know what to do next. But I believe that you can rebuild my life. And I believe that Jesus paid the price for my sin and was buried and raised back to life. And so I believe that same power can rebuild my life. So right now, I commit to follow you. Remove all the rubble and sin and brokenness from my life. Forgive me and rebuild me from the ground up. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you guys.